All right, guys, welcome back. Another Wednesday, another 11 a.m. somewhere around the world. Um, we got some beautiful questions for today, and um, I gotta be honest. I know those questions already, and this is probably the session that I'm most excited about in a long time. But enough of me spoilering it. Let's bring on the questions.
Hi, everyone. The first question is a rather broad one. What is strength?
Yep. Oh yeah, that's a good one. So let me start. Um, this is going to be a long answer, obviously. Let me start by telling a story. I heard a story once, and I'm going to refer back to strength in a second. Beautiful example of a very smart salesperson who got asked a question how to become smarter and how to become more charismatic. And I think the answer to the advice of, hey, get stronger, like, have you ever heard that advice from either a coach or a physio or a doctor or your mom or your coach or your whatever sports club coach? Like, get stronger, right? So find strength out there. And the sales guy's answer was fascinating because he said, I don't know what you mean by getting more charismatic. I cannot teach you to be more charismatic. And I think that's the same for our strength coaches. What we can do is break it down to like actionable small steps so everybody knows what to actually do when they get told to be more charismatic or more stronger. Let's take charismatic first. If I tell you, hey, be more charismatic, without saying what that actually means. I'll give you five things how you become more charismatic in like the next 3 hours. Actionable steps. Step number one is okay, whenever you enter a room, make eye contact with everybody. That's step number one. That's actionable and it's measurable. So that means if I observe you trying to become more charismatic, I can watch you enter a room and see if you address everybody's eyes in that room. Number one. Number two is shake everybody's hand, right? That's measurable. I can see it. I can teach it, and I can tell you, hey, you have you have shaken 4 out of 5 hands. There's room for improvement. Number three, smile when you talk to people, right? Super complicated. How many people did you miss smiling at in that room? We can measure that, and the list goes on and on. And I'm not gonna give you all the five ones now. But the same goes for strength now. So whenever somebody tells you, okay, get stronger or needs to gain strength, what does that mean? So my definition of strength is super simple. I wanna reverse engineer it for you. And this is how I actually came up with my definition for it. There's two things we need to improve when you want to get stronger, which is you have to gain muscle quantity and muscle quality. That's it. That's how you get stronger. Okay. Then a fair question to those two topics would be, what does that mean? Let me break it down for you. More quantity means more size of your muscle. Okay, that is already measurable. The question is, what do I need to develop to gain quantity of your muscles? The short answer is you have to grow balls, right? That's totally gender neutral, ladies out there. You don't have to send me emails. It's a metaphor for doing stuff that you don't want to do. I could call it don't be a small cat, but it would be even worse. So I'm not going to mention it. Let's just keep it for growing balls. Growing balls means, okay, which muscles do I have to use or which muscles do you need to grow bigger? And what am I avoiding to do that? Right. And this is also about pure will. And that's where all the discipline and motivation comes in, right? You need balls, both men and women. You have to step up to put more into your training, more volume, more intensity, etc. How is that measurable? Oh, super simple. We can measure if your quads got bigger or your hamstrings got bigger, right? We can measure if an increase in quantity of your muscle. That means your booty got bigger. Okay, that's cool from an aesthetic part, if that's your goal. But does it also mean that your Sempe carries number got up? Does it already mean your squat got up? Like that's how we measure stuff if it's actually working. But that's the quantity part. The quality part is where you need more brain, right? So balls and brain. That's what you need to get stronger. You need the brain for figuring out, okay, what do I need to do or what behavior do I need to change in order to make my muscles work better and get more quality in there? What does quality mean? And as you can see, I'm rolling this backwards because quality per se doesn't mean anything. Quality for me means more time under required tension. What does more time under required tension mean? That means you have three things. You have time, you have muscles, and you have jobs. That's the three pillars of my tension with position, position with tension, and that's the tension part. Again, you need big muscles, you need more time, and you need all three jobs. Let's break it down. More time, this is pretty simple. That just means you have to keep your muscle under longer time under tension. That's what everybody understands, but it's not as easy as just doing pause squats, for example. Let me read a quote, and I have to actually read it from my screen now because I don't want to mess it up because there's one of my heroes. Why time is so important. So there's a guy out there, maybe some of you know him. His name is Louis Simmons, probably the best strength coach and athlete at the same time, owner of Westside Barbell. And he said, I'm going to read it out loud. Strength is measured in time, not the weight lifted. We can only produce maximum muscle tension for a certain time limit. If the lift isn't completed in that time, you will fail. That means, and that's why time is in my strength equation. But it's not only time, but it's also the required jobs of your muscles in a time span. So that means it's not about a pause squat. It's about the three jobs of your muscle getting more challenge, so to speak, in absorbing, producing, and stabilizing tension, right? And one of those three or more, two or three, is always off. And that's normal because that's just life, right? That's what training is for, to fill those holes. And the third pillar of tension is the big muscles. We're going to talk about this in detail on a different call, why I call them big muscles. But the point is, some muscles are just bigger, and I have a very scientific theory, which means bigger muscles need to do more work. Oh, who knew, right? Small muscles do less work, big muscles do more work. So that is the tension part of the equation. Give me 2 more minutes, and I'll give it a bigger picture. And the last part of strength for me is the position part. So we covered the tension, now we cover the position. So we get to position with tension. Position means literally where bones should be when you move. That's it. That's the skill of position. And I've mentioned the word already. For me, strength is training position with tension. And I'm going to break down the skill of position for you. So it's going to be actionable. That means where does bone A need to be when you do a deadlift or a squat or a carry? Plus, which tension needs to be applied based on time, job, and which muscle should actually do work. So long story short, that is my definition of strength. I'm going to repeat it in like a 30-second elevator pitch now. That means bone positions starting off with neutral hip, a neutral shoulder, and a neutral spine. That's all you need to know, and that's all you need to practice as a start and probably for the first couple of years in terms of the skill of position, right? Times more time under required tension. That means you have to train your big muscles in the 3 required jobs for longer periods of time. Position times tension equals more quantity and more quality, which equals strength for me. I've prepped this like 25 times before this call, and I hope I got it somewhat understandable for you. My point being is the same as teaching be charismatic, breaking it down to really actionable steps, smile and shake the fucking hand, is the same with strength. The same skill of getting more charismatic is the same skill as gaining strength, which means, okay, I need to do this. My big thigh bone needs to be there, plus this muscle needs to be under this job for this amount of time with that exercise, for example. That's it. That's how we have to break down training so it gets teachable. What's not enough is, for me at least, nowadays, is either overemphasizing position or tension to equal strength. What does it mean? It's not enough to say, okay, get your chest up in a deadlift or in a squat or push your knees out. Like that's positions only. And then there's another group who's emphasizing on tension, which means use more hamstring, get your glutes in, push with your quads. All of that leads always to the same question, which is, what the fuck does that mean? I don't know what that means. So we have to break it down and be like, okay, this is where your bone needs to be. This is where tension needs to go. There's no deviation here. There's no deviation there. This is where the pressure on your whatever foot needs to be. So I can check boxes to get to a bigger result. So that's my definition of strength. I hope you like it. Bring on the questions or the critics or the comments. If you don't give me comments on the balls or don't be a small cat thing, please. It's a joke.
I have a question. Do you think that this pure focus on tension has kind of swept from the field of athletes into the normal people world? Because to me, it seems that an athlete is probably so in tune with what is happening where that when you tell him like, hey, focus on your hamstring, they're like, okay, gotcha. But for a normal person, that's like, okay, to begin with, where is my effing hamstring? Do you think that this kind of like swept from the athlete space into the normal people space?
I think the biggest challenge for us as normal coaches, for normal people who train 2 to 3 times a week, is working against a narrative of fitness and strength that is not a reality. And that kind of yeah, of course that comes from sports. Of course that comes because we need heroes and role models. Of course this comes from Instagram. Of course this comes from live broadcasting of awesome sporting events. Of course this comes from interviews that pro athletes give you and be like, okay, I'll do like 55 exercises of mobility work and recovery work and I'll eat this and I'll eat. Yes, of course, because that's a job, right? That's a 60-hour plus job per week. My reality is, and I love it, working with normal people that have like 2 or maybe like 3 hours a week, and that's it. And that's totally fine. So we cannot take like a 60-hour work week schedule and kind of push it into a 2 hour, very narrow work window for our normal people. That's not going to work. The uh, the cool thing with pro athletes is, and I was fortunate enough to stumble into some of them, is they'll make everything work. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pro athletes, right? So you can give them anything that could be really, really stupid, and they'll make it work because they're genetic freaks, they're athletic freaks, they're dedicated. They have like they wake up and they want to work on their craft, whatever it is, whether that's chess playing or soccer or weightlifting. Like, but that's not us. That's not normal people. Pro athletes will make the shittiest program, the shittiest exercises, and the shittiest coaches look really smart.
This actually, what you just said,
That's why they're pro athletes.
that what you just said actually made me think of the CrossFit Games, what they have become now, that you kind of like expect from those athletes like a plethora of abilities. I mean, something that some people do criticize because they say that it's losing the kind of like the original taste, but that what came to my mind when you just said that. But to spin from that narrative you mentioned, actually, our second question goes in there as well, because the second question was from a follower of yours who said that with all the mobility work, warm-ups, strength work, assistance works, he feels like he actually has no real time to train because, again, he's not a pro athlete and he needs to get all of that done in like a very limited time cap.
So there's two strategies. If you think you need to do a lot of stuff, that leads either to you training 3 hours, which should be a 1 hour session, or you have just simply 1 hour left from your day for training, and you're gonna cut it down to like 5 minutes of real training because you have to warm up for 10 minutes, you have to do 5 mobility exercises for 25 minutes. I'm sorry, you have to do your assistance work, and then there's something left, which is the actual work of what you have to do, which you literally start doing when you're tired. Like just logically, this doesn't make any sense. And I'm not against warming up, and I'm not against doing specific work. My question is, what is your goal? How much time do you have? And what do we actually have to achieve? What is the potential of your time? And what gets the most benefit out of it? Like the biggest bang for your buck. That's all I care about. I'm not saying you shouldn't do mobility work or warm up. I'm saying, yes, you should do it if you have X and Y amount of time. And I'm saying, no, it's not necessary if you only have 2 hours a week. Because the baseline for everybody out there should be, I'm going to say the fucking sentence, get stronger, right? But I explained already what strength is. So that's what your whole focus should be about. Okay, let me give you a practical example. What does that mean for training 2 hours a week? This means, all right, 10% of your training time, which is 2 hours, which is 120 minutes. That means 10% is 12 minutes for your whole week. 12 minutes of your whole week, your whole training week should be dedicated to learning stuff, to getting big muscles to fire, right? I'm not going to go into any details here. 10% of it. 80% of it, that means I'm very bad at math. That's probably about whatever 100 minutes. That's not 100 minutes. Whatever. 10% learning, 80% training exercises. That means sandbag squats. That means carries. That means presses. That means working on getting towards your neutral hip, your neutral spine, and your neutral shoulders under the heaviest load possible for you. That's it, right? Plus, you can spend some time on the tension part in your learning exercises, required jobs, time, and getting the big muscles going. There's 10% left because I said 10% learning, 80% training exercise. There's 10% left. That 10% is, and let's close the circle of pro athletes and sports and training. Those 10% are for testing. Sports is testing. Sports is not training. Sports means you're required to do certain positions with certain amount of tension, which is not balanced at all. Whether it's CrossFit, weightlifting, soccer, chess, it's never balanced. And that's fine. That's just sports. But that's the testing part of your training life. It's not the training part. So that means 10% of all of your training should be you performing whatever you sport want to train for, whether that's a full back squat for powerlifting, whether that's a full snatch for weightlifting, whether that's competing in a Hyrox event, right? 90% is something different. And let's close the loop. That's what nobody's telling. Normal people is stuff you see on TV, whether that's the CrossFit Games or the Australian Open in tennis or the World Championships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. This is sports. This is testing. This is not what you should be doing on a regular basis. Even Jitsu guys hopefully don't train how to compete, right? In competition, you want to either rip your opponents off, set a world record, or push yourself to obnoxious levels of intensity. That's what testing is for. And that's fine if you keep it at 10%.
And what would you say to someone who says that he or she cannot kind of like ignore or push the warm-ups, etc., to the side because they are in so much pain, for instance?
Okay. You mean warming up and doing mobility work because you're in pain?
Yeah, for
Okay.
instance.
Then my question is, try to get this into a short answer. All right. So then my question is, how do we know what the root cause of that pain is? How do we know that a mobility exercise or a warm up is going to fix it? How I approach it, when you have, okay, let's take a practical example. You have shoulder pain, whatever, on top of your shoulder or biceps tendon or AC joint, whatever it is, doesn't matter, right? And you say, okay, I have to warm it up and I have to do the mobility exercises because it actually feels better afterwards. And I believe you, and you may be right. My question is, okay, is that working long term? That means what means long term? Can you reduce the stuff that you have to do to zero and you're pain free and do whatever you want? That's my only measurement for progress. It's like I'm all for doing whatever 6, 8, 12 weeks of additional stuff. But my point is, if you don't get rid of it at some point, what's the point? You're just chipping away from your time potential to actually do the training work and to actually get stronger. Because then all of a sudden, and I've been there too, you're having a 2 hour session and you're doing 90 minutes of corrective exercises, warm up exercises, lightweight assistance work. And then you're so tired when it comes to the actual work, you can't do it anymore, like properly, like putting something into it to gain a response. So I'm partially for doing certain things for a short amount of time if you're in actual severe inflammation pain. I'm all for it, but make sure you can get rid of it and you're pain free. If not, it's not working. The cool thing about what I think is cool, the cool thing about my strength definition is if you reverse engineer this, as I said before, if you break it down and train the skill of position, the skill of tension, you won't need any of that stuff anymore. That's the whole point. We have to uncomplicate training, and strength training should improve your mobility, period, and your strength numbers at the same time. Because as you will see, I have a whole chapter in the book about mobility, and I'll spoiler it for you. For me, mobility and strength is exactly same fucking thing. There's no difference. You have to work on two things. That's the skill of position combined with the skill of tension. And that, I don't care if you call it strength or mobility, it's the same thing. That's why I'm stepping away from that stuff, non-meaning words. And I call it the skill of position, the skill of tension. I'll break it down. If you work on those things, you get stronger and more mobile at the same time. Shouldn't this be the goal of training anyways? My examples in the book is, practical example is how to train a fairly not so strong, but very flexible yogi and a bodybuilder in the same session, doing the same exercises. The only difference is which skill of position does the yogi have to do? Probably reduce like depth and range of motion because there's already a lot of range of motion, a lot of depth in whatever the squat, in their joints, however you want to call it, but not maybe so much for the bodybuilder. But vice versa, there's not so much tension in a very flexible person, but there's a lot of tension in a bodybuilder. So, but they can do the same exercise. It's just the execution should be different. So, I don't think in exercises. Exercises have one purpose only. It should feed and fix a problem that occurred during the strength process. And I actually have to read this from my little preparation paper in here. I don't think in exercises. I think in solving problems. And the problem is not the deadlift. The problem is you're either lacking the skill of position or you're lacking the skill of tension or some sort of both, right? And that's my goal, is to uncomplicate training and have a yogi and a bodybuilder in the same training session, and both are going to benefit. The yogi is getting stronger and the bodybuilder is getting more, whatever you want to call it, mobile, flexible, etc. That should be the goal of training.
Mm-hmm.
So to sum it up for today, super simple. My point is, do whatever you want. I want to add to your training system to uncomplicate it, so you have to do less stuff and get more progress. That's it. I'm not taking anything away from you. A very, very, very good rule of thumb is if it's working for you, if it's measurable for you, keep doing it. I don't care what it is, keep doing it. I'm not the smartest person in the world. If you figure out stuff for you that makes you stronger and more mobile at the same time, and it's measurably working, keep doing it. Don't change anything. Oh my God, don't change anything. You have progress, keep doing it. If that's not the case, and you think you're doing all the good stuff, but nothing's getting measurably better, all right, then I'll offer you a different path of seeing strength through the skills of position and the skills of tension, and getting rid of all the stuff that you're doing in your training currently, most of it. Save your time, save energy. Go on for your day, train for 2-3 hours a week, have fun with your family, get a second job, create a business, whatever. Like, training is important, but keep it to 2-3 hours a week max.
Sounds good.
That's it for the day, guys. That's it for the day, guys. Awesome questions. Bring them on. If you like my ranting, good. If you don't like my ranting, I love you. Keep going on, but send questions anyways. All right. See you guys next Wednesday, and let's get Grexy.